Hey everybody, this is Mark from Gary's Guitars in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I'm here to talk about Guitar Center store brands. It's interesting because they're everywhere. Guitar Center is ubiquitous. It's the only guitar store that a lot of people have to go to. They make a series of store brands of things, so I'm going to roast a few of them and tell you which ones are good and the hows and whys of all that. First of all, I did a video recently about how retailers are skipping, manufacturers are trying to skip retailers by selling directly to the customer. Well, also retailers like to skip the manufacturer. A lot of times big retailers like Guitar Center say, let's just make a look-alike or sound-alike product that we are the manufacturer of. And these days, to be the manufacturer of something is the person who ordered it from China. So let's skip one part of that process and let's skip the intermediary. Let's get the stuff directly from Asia and sell it directly to our customers. Well, you know, like I said, music manufacturers are doing this to stores. They're like, let's skip that person and get right to the customer. And so turnabout is fair play. And this is actually something that's been going on for much longer than that. You know, a lot of, when we talk about Radio Shack having Realistic brand and Sears having their own brands of things, Kenmore appliances and stuff like that. This has been around for a long time. It's a good way for like Guitar Center, if someone's buying a low markup Squire and they can get them to buy an extra cable or strap or something that they themselves have a very good markup on their way out the door, it can be a better way to make money. So we'll start with, and I'm also going to talk about things that concern guitarists primarily and related things. I'm not going to talk about the drums necessarily, and we'll talk about keyboards because that's one of my opinionated things. But we'll start with Rogue. Rogue is their very inexpensive line of usually electric guitars. What I know Rogue from, which I see them popping up, is Rogue made a $99 lap steel. And everyone who wanted to kind of experiment with a lap steel got a Rogue lap steel. And I just see them around a lot. Even Jake, who worked here, who plays lap steel well on a Fender lap steel, he started on a Rogue. It's just a way in if you want to spend $99 and see if you like things. So Rogue is inexpensively made, kind of crappy, but you know it's crappy, and it's priced like crappy stuff. So Rogue gets an okay. You know what you're in for, and you get something you can play with, and then move on up to something else. Now, in the guitar world, up a step from that are the Mitchell guitars. They're named for the owner of the original owner of Guitar Center. His name was Mitchell, and his last name. And they tend to be a replacement, a sit-in for like Takamine kind of guitars. So, of course, we're talking about Chinese manufacture. We're talking about guitars that, generally speaking, plywood or mostly plywood. We're talking about also low-cost instruments. And in this case, I give them, the thumb is kind of going down a little. You can get something, even the Fender product that costs almost the same is going to be better. The $139 Fender compared to the $199 Mitchell guitar. Get the Fender. Why? I don't think they necessarily play well or sound good, but also when they come into us, being used and older, they are usually they denigrate quite a bit. They'll be at the end of their lifespan, even though they're not too old. So they have a shorter lifespan than other inexpensive guitars we find. Now let's move on to Harbinger. Harbinger, first of all, the first time I was in a Guitar Center and saw Harbinger, I laughed out loud because Guitar Center sold so much Behringer gear. And Harbinger sounds like Behringer, right? And it's just a terrible name. Harbinger, like half the time when you hear a Harbinger, it's a harbinger of evil. It's a harbinger of something bad. Something bad is going to happen when a Harbinger comes. Like, sounds biblical, like the Harbinger. Although Harbinger doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing coming. It just means the announcement of something, the thing that proclaims something will come. But also not a good name, and the reason they picked the name is it sounds like Behringer. And who would make a knockoff of Behringer? Because Behringer is a knockoff of Mackie. They may seem to be kind of neck and neck in the market now, but Mackie did all those mini mixers long before Behringer came around. Now, I'm not going to trash talk Behringer too hard. They make a lot of good stuff, and they make some interesting stuff. I'm here to trash talk Harbinger. Harbingers are noticeably worse than not only Behringers, but I'd say any other PA gear I come across. One venue I like to play at has a Harbinger PA, and it gives me a headache by the end of the day. The high end is out of control, which leads to more high end howling. If someone isn't running the system well, it can lead to more feedback, but also just there's just something in the high end that just makes you want to put in earplugs. And I seldom really want to wear earplugs at a venue unless it hurts. And yeah, generally low quality. The external power supplies on the mixers when they get lost are impossible to replace, and then they cost as much as the thing to replace it. And so you might want to, if you're just going to do a microphone and a powered speaker for public address, maybe, but it's another case you want to just take a little step up. Now, let's talk about LiveWire. Actually, no, let's go back to good news for a second. Roadrunner, because I don't want to just trash all this stuff. Roadrunner is great. Roadrunner gets the thumbs up. They make cases and gig bags, and they're cheap, and they're fine. The designs are fine. They're lightweight, sturdy. Some of their stuff is better than some of the major name case manufacturers offer. They make a really good, inexpensive gig bag, so I can't talk trash about Roadrunner. I'd say decent stuff. Now let's talk about LiveWire. LiveWire is their kind of the connectors, and so they do direct boxes, cables, microphone cables, and guitar cables, and accessory cables for essentially guitars and other musical instruments. They're bad. The metals quality is bad, and they charge as much as, so a LiveWire guitar cable can cost more than a CBI cable, and CBI is much better. The LiveWire cables, I would just get molded end crappy cables instead, because the quality of the wire is, the metals quality on the wire is so poor that it doesn't even tin well, which means it doesn't, necessarily make a good contact when it gets soldered together. And the ends are also, they're kind of, they don't tin well either. You have to kind of, if you've ever had to try and repair one of these things, you just know that, like, and they, as I recall, they sell for like $20. They sell them right at the point of sale. They're like, oh, you're on your way out with your microphone? Maybe you need a microphone cable too. We have a great one right here. Because they paid $3 for it, they're selling for $20. I, as a person involved in commerce, I can't begrudge them too hard for that. However, I also don't sell low quality stuff, and I also beware of things that get offered a lifetime warranty, because that means that they planned for 10 to 20% of them to fail and to put that into the price. So, honorable mention to Sterling microphones. The Asian-made, microphones do not care whose brand is stamped on it when they leave. That's something also like, Takstar will manufacture AKG stuff, and Lewitt microphones. Those are good low-cost microphones, and the Takstars are fine. And the same thing with the Sterling microphones. Sterling gets, I wouldn't go out seeking them, but if you got one, you wouldn't be getting ripped off. They're made in the same factory that makes the mics for someone else, and they seem to work fine. Let's talk about Acoustic for a minute, and this is going to be, Acoustic is their line of amplifiers. They have a couple lines of amps. One's called Gamma, I think. Stay away from those. Acoustic is funny because they essentially work. We get them used. It was a venerable, and this is sometimes you create a brand like Rogue or Mitchell, because they named it after, and sometimes you just buy an existing name like Sterling or or Acoustic, and you try to use their prestige to help, you know. So yeah, I saw a video and John Paul Jones was playing an acoustic bass amp, so therefore Acoustic must be good. It just passes. It's really hard to repair. Only buy it if it's super cheap and if it's the only thing you can afford. All right, so there's a little, you know, some thumbs up and thumbs down, some a little roasting and a little credit given on the Guitar Store brands. Thanks for watching this video. Watch all the videos here on YouTube. First, sometimes people who watch on their television don't know there are hundreds of other videos that I've made that you can dig around and find. They just watch them weekly and go like, oh, that's cool. And they mention it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I talked about that like a year ago. And they're like, oh really? And it's like, oh yeah. So dig harder. Check out the other videos here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Check out Instagram and Facebook and wherever else that you use social media. And we'll talk to you soon.